When your own people forget you, the world seems empty. But one day, people who don't owe me anything came into my life. And they stayed. This story is about how someone else's hands can warm you when your own people are silent. Before I start, please write in the comments where you're from and how old you are. Enjoy the listening. My name is Helen, and I'm 72 years old. I live alone in a small suburban house, just a few blocks away from the bustling main street of my town. The house, though once full of laughter and life, now feels strangely empty. The walls, once alive with the sound of family, seem to echo with silence. My children, John and Emily, live far away. John has his own family and busy work life, while Emily works in another state. I don't blame them. I know that life moves fast, and responsibilities grow heavier as we get older. But it's hard not to feel forgotten, especially when the phone doesn't ring for days. My mornings are slow. I wake up early, as I always have, when the first light of day begins to filter through the blinds. The clock ticks, the house creaks, and I quietly make my way to the kitchen. The same routine every day. I boil water for tea. It's the small things that have kept me going, a warm cup to hold in my hands. I take my medicine, as I do without thinking, and look at the clock. It's always too early for my children to call, and when they do, it's brief. "Hey, Mom. How are you doing?" John will say. And Emily will add, "Everything good on your end?" I always tell them the same thing, everything's fine, just taking it easy. They don't ask much beyond that. I know they're busy with their own lives, their children, their jobs. It's not their fault, I suppose. I never want to burden them, so I keep it light. But deep down, I wish they'd ask more, stay a little longer on the phone. Sometimes I wonder if they even remember me in their busy routines. But as the days pass, I can't help but feel this hollow space grow larger inside me. The house feels quieter, emptier. The sound of my footsteps seems louder, echoing off the walls. I don't need much, a quick call, a short visit, anything really, but it doesn't happen. And so I sit in the living room, the TV running in the background, with nothing much to look forward to. I keep myself busy with small chores, cleaning, sorting through old photo albums. The pictures are a comfort, but also a reminder. There they are, John, Emily, and their children. The smiles, the laughter from years ago, when things were different, when I felt needed. It's funny, you know. I spent so many years taking care of them, making sure they had what they needed, being there through the late-night calls, the school projects, the birthdays, and even the times they fell sick. But now, I can't help but feel like they've forgotten the one person who was always there. Sometimes, I wonder, do they even miss me? I wish I could blame them. But I don't. I know how busy life gets. I know they have their own families to care for, and am just one part of their lives now, a piece of the past. But that doesn't make the loneliness easier. I try not to dwell on it. I tell myself I'm fine. But some nights, when I lie awake in bed, I think of all the things I could have done differently, all the ways I could have been more independent, less of a burden. There are days when the silence is unbearable, and I find myself talking to the walls. Not out of madness, but just to hear my voice. I'll say things like, "Well, I suppose it's just me now, or maybe tomorrow will be different." I wish I didn't feel so invisible. But then, something happened one day. A small thing, but it meant the world to me. I had just come back from the grocery store, struggling with a heavy bag, when a delivery driver named Aiden knocked on my door. He was young, with a friendly face and a genuine smile. At first, I thought he was just dropping off a package, but then he noticed me struggling. "Do you need help with that?" he asked. I was taken aback. I hadn't expected anyone to offer help. It was just a simple exchange, but for the first time in a long while, someone actually saw me. Someone noticed me struggling with something as small as carrying a grocery bag. He didn't have to offer, but he did. And it felt like a small, unexpected kindness that lit up my whole day. Aiden ended up carrying the bag into the house for me, and we talked for a few minutes. Nothing deep, nothing profound. Just a small conversation about the weather, about how fast the season was changing. But in that moment, I realized something. Even though my children were far away, even though I felt abandoned at times, there were still good people in the world. There were still moments of warmth, moments of connection. I'll admit, it was a strange feeling, to realize that someone who didn't owe me anything, someone who didn't have to care, was willing to help. But it gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It reminded me that not all connections have to come from family. Sometimes, a kind gesture from a stranger can make all the difference. I didn't know it then, but this small interaction would be the start of something bigger, something that would change the way I viewed my life, my loneliness, and my future. The days that followed felt a little different. I kept thinking about Aiden, the delivery driver who had taken a few extra moments to help a stranger. It wasn't much, but somehow, it made a world of difference to me. I started to notice small things, little bits of kindness that I hadn't been paying attention to before. I think, in a way, I had grown so used to the silence, to the absence of my children, that I forgot there were still good people around, people who noticed when you needed help. A few days after Aiden's visit, I decided to take a walk. The weather had been mild, and the air was crisp, the kind of weather that feels like a fresh start. I didn't have a particular destination in mind, I just needed to be out of the house, away from the quiet. Walking always gave me a sense of peace, a chance to clear my head. As I walked down the familiar street, I passed by a little park near my house. It wasn't much, just a few benches and some trees. But there was something comforting about the park. It had been a place where I used to take my kids when they were younger. They'd run around, climb on the swings, and we'd spend hours just enjoying each other's company. But now, the swings were empty, and the park was quiet. Still, I found myself sitting on one of the benches, the cool breeze ruffling my hair, and I let my mind wander. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, a woman approached me. She looked to be in her late 50s, with short brown hair and a kind smile. She sat down beside me on the bench, and without saying a word, she simply smiled and nodded. It wasn't awkward, like I had expected. She just seemed comfortable, like she belonged there, and her presence was unexpectedly soothing. After a few moments, she spoke up. "Nice day, isn't it?" she said, her voice warm, as though she was genuinely glad to see someone else enjoying the weather. I smiled back, surprised at how easy it was to talk to her. "Yes, it is," I replied. "I used to bring my kids here when they were little. It's funny how things change, how everything seems so different now." She nodded in understanding. "I know the feeling. I have a daughter who lives in another state, and it's been hard since she moved away. You get used to the emptiness, I suppose, but it's still hard sometimes." I couldn't believe it. She understood. For the first time in what felt like forever, someone seemed to get what I was going through. I wasn't just talking to a stranger, I was talking to someone who had lived through something similar. We talked for a while longer. She told me about her daughter, who was busy with her own family, and how she, too, had felt the same isolation after her daughter moved away. I didn't tell her everything, there were still things I couldn't quite say out loud, but I felt a strange sense of relief just having someone to talk to. I realized that the connection I'd been searching for wasn't just about blood ties. It was about sharing the simple truths of life with someone who could relate. Before she left, she gave me her number, saying, "If you ever want to talk or meet up for a walk, feel free to give me a call." It's nice to have someone who understands. I was taken aback. A simple gesture, a small act of kindness, but it meant so much to me. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't expected anyone to offer to spend time with me, to give me a chance to share my story, no strings attached. That evening, I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a connection with someone who wasn't just a passing face or a fleeting hello. Someone who saw me. Really saw me. The next morning, I decided to call her. I was nervous, after all, I didn't want to seem like I was imposing on her life. But she answered right away, and her voice was just as warm and welcoming as it had been the day before. "Hello?" she said. "Hi, it's Helen," I replied, feeling a little unsure but relieved to hear her voice. "Oh, Helen. I'm so glad you called. How are you?" We talked for a few minutes, and then she invited me to join her for coffee at a local CAF. I hesitated at first, but then I remembered how good it had felt to talk to her, and I agreed. When I arrived at the CAF, I found her sitting by the window, smiling as if we had known each other for years. She made me feel at home in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time. We talked about our lives, our children, and what it was like to feel forgotten by the people you once relied on. And through it all, I realized something: maybe I hadn't been forgotten. Maybe I had just forgotten how to reach out. As the days went on, I found myself looking forward to our weekly coffee meetups. It wasn't just about having someone to talk to, though that was a big part of it. It was also about the way she made me see life differently. She was full of stories, full of energy, and I found myself feeling uplifted after every conversation. For the first time in years, I wasn't just waiting for my children to call. I was living my life in the present, finding joy in the small things, and reaching out to others. Little by little, I started to notice a change in myself. I no longer felt like I was fading into the background. I realized that, despite my loneliness, there was still room for new friendships, new experiences, and new connections. The world outside my door wasn't as quiet as it seemed. There were still people who cared, people who were willing to listen, to understand, and to share their lives with me. And in that, I found hope. After meeting Lily a few more times, something inside me began to shift. I found myself looking forward to our coffee dates, our walks, and even the quiet moments when we would just sit together in the park, letting the world pass by. Her presence was like a gentle reminder that life, despite its challenges, still had beauty and connection to offer. One afternoon, after we had spent a couple of hours talking, Lily brought up something I hadn't really thought about. "You know, Helen," she said, stirring her coffee slowly, "I've been going to this community center near my house. They offer all sorts of classes for people like us. Things like painting, photography, learning how to use technology. It's funny, but Eve found something in each of those classes that's made me feel more alive. I think you'd love it. There's no pressure, just a group of people learning together. You should try it." I was taken aback at first. Me? Go to a class? I hadn't been in a real class since the kids were in school. It seemed like something out of reach, something for younger people, not someone like me. I had spent so much time caring for my family, and now, as I was getting older, I felt disconnected from the world of learning and growth. I had convinced myself that those days were behind me, that my time had passed. But Lily's words stuck with me, and slowly, I began to feel a spark of curiosity. The next week, I decided to visit the community center. It was a small building, tucked between two old houses, with a warm, welcoming sign on the front door. When I stepped inside, the familiar scent of fresh coffee and old books greeted me. There were a few people milling around, talking in small groups, and there was a sense of warmth in the air, something I hadn't felt in a while. I walked up to the front desk and hesitantly asked about the classes. The woman behind the counter smiled warmly at me. "Are you interested in our digital photography course?" she asked. "Or maybe you'd like to try the painting class? We also have a course on using tablets and smartphones for beginners. It's very popular." I felt a little intimidated at first. Digital photography? I hadn't even touched a camera in years. And tablets? I had trouble just answering my phone sometimes. But something inside me pushed me forward. "I think I'd like to try the painting class," I said, feeling a bit nervous but also excited. The woman handed me a small brochure with details about the course and welcomed me to join the following Saturday. "Don't worry," she said. "It's a very relaxed class. Everyone is at their own level, and we all learn together. You'll be just fine." When I left the community center, I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. I was about to do something completely new, something I had put off for so many years. I was about to step out of my comfort zone and try something I had always loved, painting. I hadn't picked up a paintbrush in over 30 years, but the thought of returning to something that once brought me so much joy gave me a feeling I hadn't had in a long time: hope. Saturday came, and I nervously walked into the classroom, a small room filled with natural light and easels. A few people were already there, mostly older adults like me, chatting and setting up their supplies. The instructor, a kind woman named Sarah, welcomed me warmly. "We're going to start with something simple today," Sarah said, smiling. "Let's paint a still life. It's not about perfection, it's about enjoying the process and finding your own creative flow." I felt a little awkward at first, unsure of how to hold the paintbrush or which colors to use. But as I started to paint, something strange happened. I forgot about the years of loneliness, about the pain of feeling forgotten. I focused on the colors, the brushstrokes, and the simplicity of the moment. It was just me, the canvas, and the peaceful rhythm of painting. By the end of the class, I had created something simple, a bowl of fruit, painted in bright, vibrant colors. It wasn't perfect, not by any means, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long while, I felt proud of something I had done. After the class, Sarah came up to me. "Helen, that was wonderful," she said, genuinely pleased. "You really have a knack for this. I think you'll do even better next time. Keep at it." I smiled, surprised by her encouragement. It had been so long since someone had praised me for something I did. It wasn't just about the painting, it was about the feeling that I was still capable of doing something good, of creating something beautiful. For the first time in ages, I felt like I was starting to rediscover a part of myself that I had forgotten. Over the next few weeks, I continued attending the classes. I painted more still lives, experimented with different techniques, and met new people. And with each passing day, I felt a little lighter, a little more like my old self. The act of creating, of being surrounded by people who were also learning and growing, gave me a sense of connection I hadn't experienced in a long time. And then one day, as I was finishing a painting of a vase of flowers, something shifted inside me. I realized that life wasn't just about waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for someone to visit. Life was about taking small steps, about opening yourself up to new experiences, and about finding joy in unexpected places. I had spent so many years giving my love and energy to my family that I had forgotten how to take care of myself, how to nourish my own soul. But now, I was learning how to do that again. And perhaps, for the first time in years, I could truly say I was living, not just surviving. A few weeks later, I found myself looking forward to Saturday mornings. The anticipation of going to my painting class, the gentle hum of creativity in the air, and the camaraderie I had begun to form with my fellow students became something I cherished deeply. Each class felt like an opportunity to grow, to reconnect with something I had buried under years of responsibility and routine. It was a warm Friday afternoon when Lily called me out of the blue. She hadn't been to the community center yet, but I could tell she was excited about something. "Helen," she said, her voice bright and enthusiastic, "I've been thinking. We should try something new together. How about going to a local art exhibit this weekend? There's a gallery nearby, and they're showcasing some incredible work. It'll be a great chance to see what others are doing and get some inspiration for our own projects." I paused for a moment. Going to an art exhibit? It sounded like something I would have done years ago, before everything changed. I hadn't thought about visiting a gallery in ages. But Lily's excitement was contagious, and suddenly, I felt a surge of energy I hadn't felt in a long time. "All right, let's do it," I said, surprising myself with how quickly I agreed. "I'd love to go." Saturday morning came, and we met outside the gallery, just a short walk from the community center. It was a small but charming place, the kind of gallery you might easily overlook if you weren't paying attention. As we walked through the door, the soft lighting and the quiet atmosphere felt different, like we had entered a world of possibility, where anything could happen. Lily and I wandered through the rooms, looking at the paintings, the sculptures, and the intricate designs that seemed to capture emotions in ways words couldn't. There was one piece that stood out to me, a landscape painted in such vibrant colors that it almost seemed to come alive. The artist had captured a field of flowers swaying in the breeze, with light spilling through the trees. It reminded me of my own garden, back when I had the energy to take care of it. A place full of life, of beauty. I stood there for a while, staring at it, feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and longing. I felt a deep appreciation for the artist's ability to bring something so simple, nature, to life in such a stunning way. For a brief moment, I thought about how I had always dreamed of painting landscapes, of capturing nature's beauty on my own canvas. When Lily came up to me, she noticed the look on my face. "That piece speaks to you, doesn't it?" she asked gently. I nodded. "It's beautiful. I always wanted to paint landscapes, but I never thought I could. I never thought I had the talent. But seeing this, it makes me want to try again." Lily smiled and placed a hand on my arm. "You should, Helen. You really should. Who says you can't?" Her words sparked something inside me, a quiet but persistent urge to try. Maybe I hadn't been the best painter, maybe I wasn't a professional, but that didn't mean I couldn't try again. And as I stood there, surrounded by works of art, I felt a renewed sense of possibility. It was never too late to start something new, to pursue a dream that had been put on hold for so long. After we left the gallery, Lily and I stopped for coffee at a small cafe nearby. We sat by the window, sipping our drinks in the quiet warmth. I looked out at the world passing by, noticing the subtle beauty in the details of everyday life, the sunlight filtering through the trees, the people walking by with smiles on their faces, the small, unnoticed moments that made the world feel full. "Maybe we should start our own art group," Lily said, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "We could meet once a week, have a place to share our work, and just enjoy the process together." I laughed, surprised at how bold she was. "That sounds like a great idea," I said. "But I'm not sure anyone would want to see my paintings." "Oh, I think you'd be surprised," she replied, her voice full of encouragement. "It's not about being perfect, Helen. It's about enjoying the process and supporting each other. We all have something valuable to share." Her words echoed in my mind as I walked home that day. It wasn't just about the paintings, or the art, or the classes. It was about finding joy in the journey, in the act of creating something that was uniquely mine. It was about connecting with others who understood that life wasn't always about perfection, it was about showing up, trying, and growing together. That night, as I sat at my kitchen table, I decided to take another step. I pulled out a blank canvas and set it up in front of me. I didn't know what I was going to paint, but I knew one thing: I was going to start. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paint, brushes, and new friendships. I began to experiment with different techniques, combining my love for landscapes with the abstract, creating something that was uniquely mine. I didn't know if they were good paintings, but I didn't care. They were my expressions, my feelings, my way of showing the world how I saw it. As the weeks went on, my confidence grew. I began to feel like I had found something I could call my own. My art was a reflection of my journey, my loneliness, my hope, my fears, and my strength. And every brushstroke was a small victory, a reminder that I was still capable of creating, of living fully. It was then that I realized, I wasn't just painting on canvas. I was painting my life, one stroke at a time. As the months went by, the small art group that Lily had suggested slowly began to take shape. We started meeting once a week at the community center, each of us bringing our own creations, our own stories, our own struggles. It was a wonderful mixture of people, some were older, like me, others younger, but we all shared a common bond, the desire to create, to express ourselves, to find meaning in our lives through art. Every session was different. Some days, we would sit in silence, each of us absorbed in our work, only the sound of brushes on canvas or pencil scratching paper. Other days, we would share our thoughts, our ideas, and our frustrations. And every time we met, it felt like we were building something more than just art. We were building a community, a place where we could belong, where we could be seen for who we were, not just the roles we played in the lives of others. I found myself looking forward to these meetings, not just because of the art, but because of the people I had come to know. There was Carol, a woman in her late 50s, who painted delicate watercolors of flowers, her gentle spirit reflected in every stroke. And then there was George, a retired teacher, who started experimenting with abstract painting after his wife passed away a few years ago. He was still finding his voice, but his work was full of emotion, full of life. But it was Sarah, the instructor, who had become a true mentor to me. She had a quiet wisdom about her, a patience that made her the perfect guide for all of us. One afternoon, she pulled me aside after class. "Helen," she said gently, "I've been watching you, and I see something in your work. You have a unique way of blending colors and capturing light. Have you ever thought about showcasing your art? There's a local exhibit coming up, and I think your work would be a perfect fit." The words took me by surprise. Me? Showcase my work? I hadn't even considered it. I had always painted for myself, for my own peace, never thinking that anyone else would want to see it. But Sarah's encouragement planted a seed in my mind. Maybe this was my chance to share a piece of myself, to show the world what I had been creating, even if it wasn't perfect. Maybe this was another step forward, another way to step out of the shadows of my own self-doubt and embrace the person I was becoming. The exhibit was scheduled for the following month, and as the days passed, I worked harder on my pieces. I poured myself into every stroke, every detail. The paintings I had been creating weren't just pictures, they were reflections of my journey, my experiences, and the way I saw the world. I didn't know if they were good enough for an exhibit, but I no longer cared. They were mine, and that was enough. When the day of the exhibit finally arrived, I was a bundle of nerves. I put on my best dress, the one I hadn't worn in ages, and drove to the gallery with my paintings in the back of my car. When I walked in, I was immediately struck by the beauty of the space. It was a small gallery, but the walls were lined with art from local artists, each piece telling its own story. I set up my work in the corner, nervous but excited. People began to trickle in, admiring the paintings, chatting with the other artists. And then something happened that I hadn't expected. People started stopping in front of my work. They stood there, staring at the colors and the patterns I had created, and I felt a strange mixture of pride and disbelief. One woman, a stranger to me, looked at me and smiled. "These are beautiful," she said. "You've captured something so peaceful, so full of life. It's like I can feel the emotions in the colors." I didn't know what to say. No one had ever said anything like that about my work before. For a moment, I felt like I was floating, like my art had touched someone in a way I hadn't imagined. As the evening went on, more people stopped by, commenting on my pieces, asking me about my process, about what inspired me. I felt a rush of gratitude, not just for the recognition, but for the fact that I was here, that I was part of something bigger than myself. This wasn't just about the art, it was about the connections I had made, the new friendships I had formed, and the way I had rediscovered my own strength and voice. That night, as I drove home, I realized something. I had spent so much of my life waiting for others to reach out, for my children to visit, for someone to give me purpose. But in that moment, I understood that purpose was something I could create on my own. I didn't need to wait for anyone to define me. I was already living the life I had always wanted, a life full of creativity, connection, and possibility. I thought of my children, of course. I thought of them often. But I no longer felt like I was just a background character in their lives. I was living my own story now, one that was still being written, full of new chapters, new friends, and new dreams. And for the first time in years, I could say with certainty, I wasn't alone anymore. The months following the art exhibit were filled with new experiences, new connections, and a deep sense of fulfillment that I hadn't felt in years. My painting group continued to meet weekly, and the community center became a place of comfort and growth. It was more than just a place to create art, it was where I rediscovered parts of myself I thought I had lost forever. Lily, George, Carol, and Sarah, these people, who had once been strangers, became my closest friends. We shared not just our art, but our lives. I learned about George's journey of healing after losing his wife, about Carol's quiet strength as she raised her grandchildren, and about Lily's own struggles with loneliness. Together, we built a support system that I never expected to find. But even with all the growth and joy I found in my new life, there were still days when the weight of being far from my children felt heavy. I missed them, of course, the moments when they were young, when their laughter filled the house, when their presence made me feel needed. I missed the days when everything felt so certain. One evening, as I was finishing a painting of a sunset, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, as I didn't expect anyone to call. But then I saw it, John. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I didn't know what to expect. "Helen? Mom?" His voice came through the phone, a bit uncertain. "I'm so sorry I haven't called in a while. Things have been crazy with work and the kids. I've been meaning to get in touch, I hope you're okay." I didn't know what to say at first. Part of me wanted to feel angry, to remind him how much I had missed him. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and smiled. "I'm doing just fine, John. It's been a little quiet, but I've been keeping busy. I've started painting again, actually. It's funny, I never thought I would, but it's been really good for me." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then John spoke, his voice softer than usual. "That sounds amazing, Mom. I'm really glad to hear that. Maybe we can come visit soon, if you'd like. I know it's been too long." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. I didn't expect everything to change overnight, but hearing his voice, hearing the sincerity in his words, meant more than I could express. "Of course, John. I'd love that. I've missed you all." We talked for a few more minutes, and as the conversation ended, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for so long. I had waited for this moment, but I realized that the real change had already happened. It wasn't about waiting for my children to come to me. It was about embracing the life I was building for myself, about learning to find joy in the little moments, and about realizing that it was okay to be independent, to live my own life. The next day, I received a text from Emily, my daughter. She apologized for not staying in touch and asked if I would like to visit her soon. I felt a rush of emotion, but I responded with a simple message, "I love that." As I set the phone down, I realized something important. Life had a way of shifting, of bringing things full circle. My children would always be a part of me, but I was no longer waiting for them to fill the spaces in my heart. I had learned to fill those spaces myself, through my art, through new friendships, and through the quiet moments of reflection that now filled my days. I had spent so many years being everything for others, a mother, a wife, a caretaker, that I forgot to be everything for myself. But now, as I stood in front of my easel, brush in hand, creating something new once again, I understood that it wasn't too late. It had never been too late. As I finished my painting, I stood back and took a deep breath. This was my life now, a life I was proud of, a life full of color, possibility, and purpose. I wasn't just living. I was thriving. And for the first time in years, I realized that this was only the beginning. If you liked this story, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and share your feedback in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the window on the left. Thank you for watching.